Hey everyone, it's Noon here, back with part 2 of my series introducing total beginners to Europa Universalis IV. I'm just going to dive in as Tier Connell, and we'll pick up where we left off last time. The first video ended up being too long, so cut into two. This one is going to cover the main menu and all of the tabs in it. The leftmost, this is the main menu, which has all of these different tabs in it, and it's called the country view apparently, but yeah, menu, and it has all these tabs. The first one is court. There's also government, diplomacy, economy, blah 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 blah, and you will end up using pretty much all of these except trade, and you'll get to know them like the back of your hand pretty soon. But let's start with court. So the main thing that you have here is a ruler. We have a king. His name is, oh no, I know, if I mispronounce some Irish words and names, they will get mad and it'll, increase my views or something. But Niartano Donal, that's my guess. And his stats are 3, 3, 2, which means that each month he generates 3 admin power, 3 diplo power, and 3 mill power. 2 mill power. 333 is pretty much average. 332 is fine. He's 26. He is, you can mouse over here, you can see he's Catholic and he's Irish, which is unsurprising. And rulers also have these traits. You get one every couple of years for a maximum of 3. So you can see we'll get one in 5 years and another in 20 years. Also, he's righteous, which means he is going to improve our legitimacy every month, which is great. That's a pretty good one. And you can also abdicate, but we can't because we don't have an heir. So that's the next piece of information here. No legal heir. If you want, you can introduce one. I think this is a piece of DLC that I have, so you might not have this button, which is true of quite a few things, but like the shape of the game is pretty similar. That was what I meant about my joke at the start about like it's already out of date by the time this comes out, but there really is an update coming out soon, so maybe I should have waited. Anyway, and then you've also got a consort or queen or wife or husband or prince or princess or whatever it is that you're married to, depending on your rank and whatnot. They don't really matter except if you're a king, you get married and have a queen, and you have an heir but they're like 4 years old, that you have to wait until they're 16, and then you'd have a regency and you'd have a queen. So if the king dies, the queen will take over as queen regent, and then her stats will apply. And there are some places where you can have female rulers and male consorts, but doesn't matter on a game mechanic level. It's all treated pretty much the same. Okay, so that's the first bit. This is your like literal court, your king, heir, and spouse. And then you have your advisors, and these guys are really, really important. So these are your total output of power each month. And if you mouse over here, admin power 6, diplo power 6, military power 5, 6, 6, 5. Good. So 3 of those are from our king, and you can see there it's from Niatan's diplomatic skill or whatever. And then the 5, everyone gets 3 by default. So even if you have a 0, 0, 0 king, you still get 3, 3, 3. We get 6, 6, 5. You can also focus on one of them. You can click this little button here, and for 20 or 25, I think, years, you won't be able to change it, but that one will be generating more at the expense of the others. So if I click the military one here, and you probably don't want to do this right at the start of the game. I'm demonstrating this so that you know not to click it without thinking. Cool, now I'm getting 557, right? It's redistributed the income a little bit, but now I can't change it again for 25 years until 1469. So you want to think carefully about your next 25 years before you click those buttons. But one thing that you can do to make up for it is recruit advisors. So by default, every country, I think, gets offered 3 advisors in each category. And the things that are here, so each of them has a job, or like, so this guy's a Grand Captain, which does land maintenance modifier, which makes your armies cheaper. This one is a Quartermaster, does reinforced speed. And there are different jobs available for diplo advisors, right? So they do trade and diplomatic reputation and so on. And admin advisors do, stability cost, inflation reduction, prestige. Yeah. So there are different jobs available for the different types of advisors, is my point there. But what all of them do is add a point or more. So the cheap ones add 1, the expensive ones add 2 or more. You can get 3 or all the way up to 5. They add that many mana to your country each month. So say we really just want to, like, really need military points for some reason, I could buy this reinforced speed person for, it'll take just under 15 ducats to hire them, like as a down payment, and then it's going to cost us 1 a month. So let's just do that for now. You can fire them. You have to wait a month, but that's this little boot button here. But you can see we've got +1 and giving us 8 per month, right? So we're really stacking on the military here with the focus and now hiring an advisor. There's some information about these people, right? So that's what culture they are and what religion they are, which kind of matters. It's not that important. And if you like know that you don't want this person to defend your forts, you can fire them forever. It costs as much as it costs to hire them, but then next month you'll get offered a new different person. So if you really want, I don't know, tax modifier or whatever guy, you could roll for a new one next month, but it does cost quite a bit of money, so do it sparingly or only when you're desperate. You can introduce an heir, as I said. You can also get heirs from marrying people, and you have a chance of having a child each month. Okay, that's the court tab. Let's move on to the government tab. So government tab, kind of what it sounds like. It's pretty sparse. You probably won't need to come here all that often. One thing I mentioned before, the government reforms button is like hidden behind another menu, which is an annoying thing that EU4 does, but for some reason they gave this one its own button as well, but whatever, doesn't really matter. You can also upgrade your kingdom rank. You don't really have to worry about that. You'll get an alert when you can do it, and it gives you bonuses, so you should. One thing that you might be interested in is the country modifiers. So if you mouse over here, we purchased an indulgence from the Pope, so we're getting extra Pope points each month, which you can see in here how many Pope points you're getting each month. Again, I'm not going to go into that heaps in this video. If you want, you can see absolutely every modifier that is applicable to your country in alphabetical order. So if you really need to know your national unrest, you can come and check it in here, or your trade steering strength, you can come check it in here. There's also accepted cultures, which all of our provinces are Irish. Maybe I'll just switch tags again real quick so I can show you somewhere else. Okay, so here we are as the Mamluks. And you can see already the Mamluks have like some extra stuff here. So some governments have special unique abilities that they can do, and it's worth checking if you're playing a country. Just like pop in here on your way by and like see if you've got any special stuff here. I'm not going to go into what the Mamluks ones are, just like some countries have them, some don't. What I was going to talk about is cultures. Every province has a culture, so if we click on this one, you can see this one's Bedouin, this one's Egyptian, and you can check this even for countries that you don't have like proper military site on or whatever. This one is Kazakh, this one's Kyrgyz, and so on and so forth. And the different cultures can either be accepted or not accepted, and you get certain buffs or like debuffs depending on if the province is accepted culture or not. Doesn't super matter for the sake of this video, but if you need to mess around with culture stuff, you can do it here, and that's very useful for like hunting achievements or whatever, various sorts. It's kind of tricky, used for like exploit kind of strats, I guess. It's not quite an exploit, but whatever. That's something you can do. So let's move on to the Diplo tab, which is probably going to take quite a while. It's a pretty elaborate one. So you can go to diplomatic view by just right-clicking on any country. You can see the diplomatic view for Wallachia, for Nogai, Lithuania, and for yourself. And they're kind of different, or rather, when you're viewing yourself, you can't use this sub-menu tab, which is a very important sub-menu tab, and is one of the things, like this screen, the Diplo actions screen, is one of the things that you're going to spend a lot of the time in this game looking at. So I'm going to go into it in a small amount of detail. I'm still not going to tell you about every single action that you can do. You can mouse over them while you're like waiting at speed 5 for events to occur or whatever. But as I was saying, you can right click to access this, or once you're already in it, you can left click on different countries. If you just left click on a country normally, or on a province, I should say, it opens the province view. So if you're like needing to get to the Diplo view, you can either get through here, through right-clicking, Yeah. And then if you are stuck here and you're like, ugh, why can't I view my province? Just close the menu, and then you can go to province view. But this tab, the show opinions of Mamluks tab, and you can do this for anyone. So if we go to Great Horde, we can, open the same tab. We just can also do the actions, which is the important one. This one has a bunch of what I would describe as not very important information, but you can see what your neighbors think of you or your enemies or whatever. There's also the diplomatic feedback view, which basically says what provinces you're interested in. You can click on things to say I want this province. Don't worry about it for now. That's fine. You'll figure out when you need it just after you need it. So let's go to the Diplo action screen, which is really a big part of it. I'll talk about all this stuff up top as well, but the really important stuff is these interactions, and this is how you interact with other countries. You need to have diplomats. So you can see here we've got 3 diplomats. 2 of them are free, and one of them is building a spy network, which I'll talk about in a sec. And you can do a bunch of stuff. So you can declare war. This is a whole screen in itself, but basically this is how you do it. You need a casus belli, or a cause for war. I'm not going to talk about war mechanics very much. That's deep magic. Watch someone who knows what they're talking about. It's content for that one. But let's go through this. I'm just going to touch on some of the most important ones. So offer alliance. We actually can't at the moment because we don't like them. But we could offer alliance to Beja, and they would accept. They would be very happy on that. We could do it. And that would send one of our diplomats off, and they would say, oh, yes, we'd love that. And that's very important, along with royal marriage. And these are your 2 main strategies for, actually strategically intertwining with another country. Royal marriage doesn't oblige you to come to war at all, but it does occupy a diplo relation slot. So you can see here it says 4 out of 4 diplomatic relations. Different countries will have different numbers that they can. And certain types of relationships count and certain ones don't. But alliance and marriage both do. So if you really want to, say as Mamluks, we really want to ally Tunis, we might offer them, they're happy to ally us but won't marry us, which is weird. But normally it's the other way around. Someone will be like, I'm not sure about an alliance, but I will get married to you. And then you get married and they're like, oh yeah, we can have an alliance. So that's a very useful couple of buttons to press. Influence, there's a bunch of stuff here. It doesn't matter too much. They're useful in certain situations, but you don't have to worry about it. Improve relations is very important. It does exactly what it sounds like. It sends a diplomat off to be like, hey, can we be friends? Hey, we really like you. You're cool. So I'm just going to send one off to Tunis. You can see Tunis's relationship with us is plus 29. So they think plus 29 of us, and we think plus 27 of them. So that's the other really important stat that you'll use in the Diplo view a lot, or one of them. And then you can just stop that again. And I'll show you now, if we do that, it's going to take 17 days for that guy to get back before we can send him on another mission. And you can also send only 1 diplomat to each country each month. So we'll have to wait a month before we can send one off to Tunis again to, for example, ask them to ally us. We can't click any of these. That's fine. So let's keep going. So relations, that's important. Dynastic we covered. Don't worry about claim throne. Covert actions is another very important one. Say we want to attack Akoyonlu, we can go and send a spy. And so as you can see, we've already got one doing that. The AI did this while we were fucking around, while we were messing around in Venice and Ireland. So I'm trying not to swear too much on the YouTube vids. And once we get up to 20 spy network, we'll be able to fabricate a claim, which basically means we're like, hey, Raqqa is ours. We should own Raqqa. We have a right to that land, which will then give us a CB, a casus belli. We currently don't have one, and it would ruin our stability significantly. So it's usually bad to do a no CB war, and no casus belli war, and the easiest way to get a casus belli, build a spy network and fabricate a claim. You can do other stuff, don't worry about it too much. Economy actions. We can These ones are fun. They're a little bit advanced, I would say, in that they're not like fundamentally essential for the gameplay. But there's a bunch of really useful stuff. So we can say, hey, Delkadir, could you send us some of your trade power? Again, don't worry too much about what that means. It's dark magic. But more trade power equals more money, more good. Ditto, issuing embargoes is a useful way to get power projection. So we could, as Mamluks, we're rivaled with the Ottomans. Again, I'll talk about rivals in a sec. They're our rival, and we can embargo them, which will give us power projection and make them earn slightly less money. It will mean that they'll have a CB on us to protect their trade. So I've actually literally never had the AI declare war on me because I embargoed them, so I think of it as free, but your mileage may vary. Okay. What else is there? So economy actions, yeah, blah, blah, blah. There's a bunch of stuff. Sending gifts will make people like you more. It won't help with your rivals. Access actions. Can we walk through your land, please? Dolkadir will say yes. So if we can do that, we can walk our armies through. So if we went to war with the Ottomans, we can't just like march our army through neutral territory. We have to get permission. But if you have access, your war enemy will also have access, so they can come through Dolkadir as well. I'm not going to do that right now, but anyway, that does cost as a Diplo relation slot, so you should remember to get rid of it as soon as possible, because every time you go over your Diplo relations limit, each month you earn one less Diplo point. Okay, and then there's favors. Your allies will give you stuff if you have enough favors, which you accrue just by being allies for a while. And if you're a great power, you can do some stuff, like if they have debt, you can pay off their debt. If they're at war, you can intervene in the war. You can tell them to break an alliance, which they may or may not do. And you can pay a bunch of cash for them to like you a bunch and to get extra monarch power, which is, you know, that's a pretty hefty gift to give someone. So it does increase their trust and opinion. So there you go. That's a brief summary of the diplomatic actions that you can take in EU4. All right, here we are as Venice again. Luckily, the AI hasn't set any rivals while we switched over to those other countries. So enemies and rivals are two sides of the same coin. Enemies are people who have rivaled you, and when you rival someone, you'll be their enemy, right? So rivals, enemies. Yeah, if we go to Denmark, for example, they have rivals, Venice. If we go to Venice, enemies, Denmark. That math checks out. And you will have an alert at the start of the game. Too few rivals. You need at least 3 rivals not to have a penalty to your power projection and score. Score is up here. It doesn't matter at all from a game perspective, but whatever. Click on this. This gives you a bunch of useful information, including who has rivaled you. Rivaling back the people who have rivaled you is a completely reasonable rule of thumb. It's rarely optimal, but it's fine. But you can also see, like, oh, Bohemia, yeah, doesn't like us. We have a bigger army than them. They have no navy, and they've rivaled us. That's probably a good person to rival back. Denmark, even smaller than us. Even smaller. Milan hasn't rivaled us, but they're tiny, so maybe we should rival Milan, and so on. You can only rival people you can only change your rival every, 25 years? Yeah. But you get bonuses from beating them in wars, and you get some other bonuses or whatever. But mainly, you set rivals so as to make red thing go away. There you go. Rivals set. One little hint about gameplay is that it can be worth waiting until December the 1st to set your rivals, because your rivals will make alliances based on whether or not you have rivaled them, if you know what I mean. So, like, give them a chance to make some alliances in the first month and take the tiny penalty for 1 month, and then fill out your rivals after that once their alliances have sealed. A big part of the game is like figuring out how to navigate alliance networks that will get you drawn into uncomfortable wars that you can't win. So that's an important skill to be going on. A couple more things in this Diplo screen. I told you it was going to be a long one. Number of diplomatic relations. So as Mamluks, we had 4 out of 4. Here we have 3 out of 4 as Venice. Your diplomatic reputation is basically how Chad everyone thinks you are. We are zero Chad, so people don't care about us one way or the other. It's very useful. It's just in like pretty static amounts, so like you can sometimes get a Diplo advisor who increases it by 1. There'll be other things that increase or decrease it by 1. But if you need to check what it is, it's here. And improved relations is how good you are at schmoozing. So that's like this improved relations thing. So how effective your diplomats will be at doing that. This is just a summary of a bunch of information about your country. It's not super useful for yourself, but it is for someone else. So say we want to see, oh, Austria, they've got 26 prestige. You can just mouse over and see what it is for all of them, though. So the other important thing here is numbers of soldiers. So Austria has 18,000 troops. They have 10 ships and 9,000 manpower reserves. So that's a useful little summary as well. And on the left-hand side here, you see all of the other diplomatic relationships. So Austria is allied with the Palatinate and Castile. France has a bunch of vassals. They also have a reconquest casus belli against England. You can just go and like find out information about what's going on for a country. Next up is the economy tab, and this is one that you will spend a lot of time looking at. This is your budget. But like these are different ways that you can get income. The main ones for pretty much all countries are tax, production, trade. They're the big ones, especially at the start of the game. If you have a gold mine, gold is very valuable. Surprise. This is the total amount that you're generating of tax, so each province will generate a certain amount in tax, and then you get an additional this % on each of them. So say we go here and we get a production efficiency guy, it'll give us plus 10 production efficiency, and then we'll be earning 12%, or I should say 112% of this 3.19. And so increasing your trade efficiency or tax efficiency or whatever can be a really, really good way to increase your income. And obviously 10% of big number is bigger than 10% of small number. So ideally here, we would get a tax efficiency guy, second would be a trade efficiency guy, and if we can only get a production efficiency guy, then that would be okay. And so on and so forth. There's other ways of getting money. All of them are represented here for a total. Ditto expenses, you don't have to worry about this too much. If we had advisors, we'd be paying for them. State maintenance, whatever, blah, 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 all these other things, doesn't matter too much. Oh, I will tell you fort maintenance, actually, real quick. We have 4 fortresses, and they're costing us $1 a month each. And we can save on that, just jumping ahead to the military tab here. Down here on the left, mothball all forts. And now if we go back to economy, we're earning 5 a month, and because we're only paying half as much for each fort. And so you'll probably want to do that at the start of the game a lot of the time, but it takes a while to get them set up again, so don't get declared war on while all of your forts are empty and abandoned. Next we've got things that you can pay for with sliders. So you're going to spend a lot of the game worrying about your army maintenance being too high. And if you're not going to war in the next little while, you can just drop that down, save a bunch of cash, stack those ducats, and then a couple of, 10 months before you go to war, just like bring it back up and your troops will like slowly regain their morale and ability to fight. The same thing applies for fleets. It's exactly the same. And then that's your total expenses, and the difference is your balance. You can have negative balance. It costs out of your like total amount that you have each month until you get to 0, and then it goes below 0, and then it makes you take a loan. I'm just going to take a loan now just for fun. You get a cash payment, and you have to pay that plus interest back. So there you go. And we get a new drop-down menu here. You have loans, and also you can spend your money on stuff if you want. And we also get access to these buttons which let us repay the loans. We can repay all loans or debase currency, which, whatever, you don't need to worry about that too much. You can also declare bankruptcy, which will wipe all of our loans, but also, like, messes you up in a bunch of, destroys stability, gets rid of all of your admin points, all of your mana points, so on. Each time you take a loan, you gain inflation. You also gain inflation from gold and from certain other things, like getting big cash payments after a war from your defeated foes. And you can reduce that by spending admin power. Again, very valuable, so ideally you wouldn't do that. War taxes is really useful. It makes your armies cheaper, but it costs 2 military points per month while you're at war. So you may or may not want to use that depending on if money or military power is more important for you. Anyway, as I say, you'll spend a lot of time here. You'll get familiar with it. It's a little bit nuanced, but that's pretty much all of the important information that's here. So let's move on very quickly to trade. Look, I barely ever use this page, to be entirely honest. It's got a bunch of information about your trade abilities, which you can also check those in this tab here. You have to know which ones you're looking for, whereas this is just like all of the trade ones all at once. The only thing that's here that you can't, and these are all of the trade nodes. I prefer to interact with them via this screen, but if you prefer the max spreadsheet view, you can just do it here. You can like send your merchants to different nodes, and you can give them different jobs, and you can see like which is the biggest node and which is the smallest, and whatever. But again, I prefer to mostly do that in a different view. You might find this is useful for you. And this is our total income from trade, which, sure, I don't know why it thinks it's that much, but that's fine. The only thing that you can do here that you basically can't do anywhere else is promote mercantilism, which is a stat line here. There are events which give you mercantilism, but they're fairly rare, and it's quite a powerful statistic. So if you've got a lot of diplo power, you're heading up to that maximum limit, mercantilism can be a really good thing to spend it on. So I'm not going to talk about that screen anymore, so we'll move on to technology. Honestly, the tech tree is one of the very few things that I think is better in most other grand strategy games, because I like that civilization-style scrolling tech tree. The way it works in EU4 is there are 3 tech lines, as admin, diplo, and military, and number go up equals more gooder. And there are a bunch of things that each of them unlock, right? So, for example, as you get better military technology, you can see at level 4 our morale will increase by 0.5. Goodo, ditto, flanking range, mill tactics, combat width, buildings, and supply rate, a supply limit, and you'll unlock new advanced troops and so on and so forth that have their own stat lines. But basically, you just want the next one whenever you can. It's not going to be very easy for me to show you how to interact with the screen just at the moment because I'm not like running the game forward at all. But basically, this line is like how much admin power you have out of how much it costs to get the next tech. So we need 598 and we only have 84 available, and we'll be able to pay for it in 1452 if we don't spend any admin points on anything before then. This clock is quite important. This is the penalty or bonus to the cost of this technology from institutions, neighbor bonuses, and being ahead in time. And basically, it costs 598 now, but by the time it's February 1452, it might cost way more or way less than that, depending on like what's happening around us, or like how badly or well we do, or whatever. I mean, less so for the very first tech, but like as the game progresses, you know, there'll be disparities in how much mana people have saved to spend on different tech, so neighbors will be ahead in different areas and blah 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 blah. It's all a rich tapestry, which is, you know, all of the fun of the game is how all of these systems interlock in complex ways and how you have to try and prioritize, you know, different things that you want to spend your mana points on. One thing it says here, institutions. And institutions, in my opinion, are kind of the defining feature of Europa Universalis IV, as opposed to Civilization, or even other Paradox games like Hearts of Iron or Crusader Kings or whatever. And the only way to see the institutions is through this tiny little annoying button that doesn't look like a button, that looks like it's an illustration on the tech screen, but it's here. And there are these institutions that spawn throughout the game, and you can see what year they spawn in. So feudalism arrived in 1066, which is funny, which is like 400 years ago, whatever. And you can see it's all over Europe. Everyone that we can see has feudalism, but actually there's a bunch of countries that don't have it yet, but that's fine, it's not important. Oh yeah, these ones here, so you can see Fezzan is still like developing feudalism. They're not actually a feudal nation yet. For each of these institutions, There's a date when it spawns. They're roughly I think it's every 50 years. Is that right? Yeah. And they'll give you a little bonus. And this is how you embrace them. And once you embrace a institution, the penalty for being behind on the institution will disappear. So the rhythm, I know that sounds a bit complicated, but it makes a lot more sense like when you're in it. Basically, the rhythm of the game is when you're ahead on the institution, you dump all of your mana points into technology while you can, and then every 50 years, a new institution spawns, and suddenly your tech starts getting very expensive, and so you use your mana points to do other things while you're waiting to get the Renaissance, or colonialism, or global trade, or whatever it is. And each province has their own amount of institution, which you can get to through here. So if you go to, you just click on a province, it's this little book thing here. And so feudalism is present everywhere, whereas if we go to, where was it, Fezzan? They don't have feudalism yet. They're gaining it at 0.18 per month, which is not very fast, but, you know, they'll get there eventually. And you can increase the amount of Renaissance or whichever institution you're trying to spawn by developing your provinces. And again, this is getting a little bit deep into the juju for what's meant to be an introductory lesson, but honestly, as I said, this is kind of the defining feature of the game, in my opinion. It really sets the rhythm of the game significantly, and it means every 50 years you have to sort of like shift gears a little bit and start spending your mana points on improving your provinces and on ideas, which is conveniently the next technology, the next tab. I'm going to move on there. Oh, the only other thing here is innovativeness, I would say. I mean, obviously there's like a bunch of information here, but I'm not going to go over all of it. But innovativeness is cool. It makes everything cheaper, and you get it from being ahead in tech or being ahead in ideas. Okay, let's talk about ideas. So ideas are some of the things that really set the nations apart from one another. These are your national ideas, these ones all up here. You start off with these traditions, so they're like level 0 ones, if you know what I mean. Every country has a tradition that they start off with, and ours is global trade power and sailors modifier. And then we also have an ambition, which is once we've unlocked all of these ideas, we also get galley combat ability, plus 25%. And so different countries will have different national ideas. Ours give us naval force stuff, galley cost, more diplomats, trade efficiency, foreign spy detection, naval maintenance modifier, stab cost modifier, and land and naval attrition. Not an amazing set of ideas that Venice has, but doesn't really matter. The way you unlock them is by unlocking 3 ideas. It's annoying that both of these things are called ideas. I don't know whose idea that was. But you unlock 3 of these, and I'll talk about more in just a sec, and then you unlock 1 of these. So every 3 ideas, you get the next one of these opened as well. And eventually you just fill them all up. I think it's like towards the end of your second idea group. You end up completing all of them, getting your ambition, and then there's no more national ideas. So this next screen is quite daunting, and it's a source of much debate amongst the player groups, and I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail about it, but basically every couple of, so starting at level 5, admin tech 5, this top one, which is one of the reasons that admin tech is so important, and then 7, 10, 14, 18, blah, 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 you get to unlock a new one of these sets. So, say we start off with quantity, which is a top tier idea set. Basically, no matter who you talk to, this is like one of the contenders for the best one. And then you can spend military power to unlock each one of these. And so the first one will give us manpower modifier plus 50, manpower recovery speed plus 20, then regiment costs, blah, 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 blah. And then once we've finished them all off, we also get another free one. And these are going to cost, I think it's 400 mana points per idea by default, though you can make that cheaper in various ways. And every 3 of these that we unlock, we'll unlock another one of these, right? So when we pay for enforced service, we'll unlock Venetian Arsenal and get the force limit modifier for our boats and our cheaper galleys. And there's some mechanic that basically you can't, it's not exactly the same thing, but you can't take 2 in a row from the same group. So you'll have to go, if you take a military one first, your next one has to be either admin or diplo, vice versa. There are some things that are unique and worth noting here, mainly colonists, so you can get them in exploration and expansion are the two sources of colonists. And for most countries, these are the only ways you can get colonists. And they're going to be important if you're playing a country like Portugal, or maybe England, or Castile, or maybe someone over in the Spice Islands down here, because they let you create a province where there was no province before, pretty much. The game does somewhat crudely model indigenous inhabitants that you are like occupying the land of. So whatever. But colonization's a whole other thing. That's a video in and of itself that, you know, maybe I'll make one day, but probably you'll just like watch a couple of Let's Plays and you'll get the gist of it. But yeah, those ones are important to note. Expansion and exploration, quantity, and the rest are, you know, they do different things, but they're much of a muchness. Just spend, you know, a couple of hours reading over these and then reading Reddit threads about which ones are better for different countries. But pretty much you use it to steer the game in a direction or to steer your country in a direction. You can refund them once you take them. You get half of the mana points that you spend back. So if you take 2 ideas and then change your mind, it's not like the end of the world to pay it back, but it's not ideal. Anyway, ideas. The other thing is, for every idea that you have, you get a discount in the relevant tech group. So if you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I guess there's 7 per idea group. If you have 7 unlocked in an admin thing, you'll get a 14% reduction in tech costs. So anyway, ideas, they're another nice thing to spend your mana points on when you're waiting for an institution to spawn in your country. Or, yeah, so, because they don't scale. They don't get more expensive with the institution time. So next, let's talk about missions. Every country has missions, though a lot of them have generic missions. They don't have unique mission trees. Venice does, and a lot of the like countries that you could name off the top of your head have unique mission trees. Castile, Portugal, France, England, Hungary, Austria, Ottomans, like all of these big countries that, especially the ones that still exist today, have unique mission trees. But yeah, even the generic ones are fine. And so basically each mission has a condition and a reward, and most of them are part of a tree. So for example, once we complete Aldine Monarchy, so we need to embrace printing press, which is the 4th institutional, 3rd one I guess after feudalism, then we will be able to unlock this. We'll get minus 10% in technology costs for 10 years, which is a very good reward, I have to say. But we'll also then be able to complete this mission, or we'll be able to, you know, be eligible to complete it. And same for all of these. So, you know, once we have completed more venture captains by making money, we'll get the reward for completing that mission, which is some military power and some, you know, bonuses. And then we'll be able to unlock grants for contractors and start working on that one. And it's not uncommon to have already completed like the 2nd or 3rd missions in a tree and just wait for the first one to be complete, and then you'll be like click, 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 click. It's quite satisfying. You don't always want to take the mission, as in like to get the reward immediately once you've unlocked it, because, I don't know, say for example it gives you a buff to your military, but you know you're not going to go to war for another 5 years. You might wait 4.5 years and then take it just before the war. So something to keep in mind. You can also view your subjects mission trees. So, oh, that's interesting. Naxos, where is Naxos? You can press F to find anything, by the way. It's very useful. Naxos is down here. This is our vassal. And they have a unique mission tree as well. And we can kind of work on that, right? So we can take Al-Quds and give it to Naxos or whatever, and then they'll be able to unlock this mission, so on and so forth. That's pretty much it about missions. They're fairly self-explanatory. They make a lot of sense. Sometimes the way that they're worded is a little bit confusing, but for the most part, just read what they say and you want to fulfill them. Decisions and policies. Forget about policies for the minute. Decisions, you'll get these unlocked at various times, so we can do the statute and restraint of appeals, which basically is like, hey, the Pope sucks, actually, and it gives us some bonuses and quite a lot of negatives, as you can see. And these are up here. These are these little scroll ones. And if you don't want this to keep popping up, you can just be like, stop telling me about that, please. Often, if you hear people talking about forming a nation, say, as Venice, we could form Italy. This is where you do that for the most part. Sometimes it happens in the mission tree, but basically it's usually in the national decisions. And a lot of these are good. A lot of them are good and bad. So, like, missionary strength, that's fine. Institution embracement cost plus 10%. Wow, that's really bad. I don't ever want to hear about the act of uniformity. Don't tell me about that again. Even though we're not eligible yet. And you can see what you need to do to make yourself eligible for it. But don't worry about them too much. It's worth having a look. A lot of them are fairly generic, like the state firearm regiments. I think nearly every country has that, so you'll get used to them after a while, and you'll know which ones you do want and don't want, and so on. Policies, this is like completely boring at the moment, but if we go back to ideas just for a sec, if say we mouse over quality ideas. So when fully unlocked, this idea group gives access to the following policies, each depending on another idea group finished as well. So you have to have two idea groups fully unlocked, and then you get access to these policies. So say just this top one, if we have quality and economic, which is a common economic is, a common like second pick or whatever, we get plus 5% discipline, which is a pretty powerful military buff. And the way that you implement that is through this screen. It's not super important. You'll unlock them slowly. It took me many, many games of figuring out what the heck was going on before I even got up to the point where I unlocked a policy. And then by the time you get there, you'll have looked at the screen a million times and be like, can't wait to unlock a policy. The first one is free in each of the categories, and then the next one costs you 1 mana per month, which it's often worth it. Like, I'd pay 1 military mana per month to get that plus 5 discipline, whatever. And so that's decisions and policies. It's fairly self-explanatory. So next we're going to talk about stability and expansion, and this is quite a complicated screen, but it's not that difficult to get your head around. I'll start with a kind of weird one, I guess, which is governing capacity. The reason I'm starting with that is, like, don't worry about it. You'll run into it eventually, and by that time you'll have dealt with a whole lot of other problems by reading tooltips and figuring out what's going on. But basically, the more provinces that you own, and especially the more provinces in states that you own, don't worry about that too much, but again, you'll get there. It increases your governing capacity, and when you go over your limit, you get malices or debuffs or whatever. This is where you boost stability. This is one of the major reasons that you're going to use this screen, is to boost stability. You can see it costs 122 admin mana, which is quite a lot, but that's why it's really valuable. It can go up to +3, down to -3. It's got a little clunky slider. It's cute. And you can see what effect that this would have, right? So each level of positive stability has the following effects. Each level of negative stability has the following effects. Line go up equals more gooder. War exhaustion is the opposite. Line go up equals more bad. This is how much your people are pissed off at you because you've sent thousands of their children into a meat grinder just to conquer one tiny mountain province in Bosnia, for example. And it gives you a bunch of debuffs, which it's not showing right now because we don't have any. It ticks down over time, and you can spend Diplo mana to reduce it manually. You'll run into that when you do, but basically, like, a bit of war exhaustion is not a problem. Overextension is a problem. It causes rebels, and I kind of mentioned before about coring in passing, but when you conquer new provinces, say we'd conquered Trieste, we would get overextension for controlling a province that's not really like ours, and so you'd have to core it, and there's a whole other screen there that you'll see at some point, maybe in a future video that I do, but yeah, you'll see that, and you'll get a pop-up about it. There's also this expansion tab, which talks about your colonial policy, which as Venice, it's probably not going to be super relevant. As Portugal, you're going to run into this in, the next 20 years or something. So don't worry about it too much for now. there's a lot of guides to colonialism, and all of them talk about this. It's fairly straightforward. This is your national unrest, and this unrest is what it sounds like. It's how likely rebels are to be rebellious, and you want it low. So, again, we could go to the advisor. There's a national unrest guy who reduces it by 2, which is nice. Because we've got a bunch of rebels, and you can see them on the outliner over here, and you can also see them in the stability and expansion bit. This is all exactly the same information. It's way more useful to look at it over here, in my experience. You can just accept their demands. So Corfu, this island here, wants to be independent. So we could just accept their demands and let them go. That's rarely the right thing to do. Rebels, it's a whole thing. Basically, they'll just pop up and you need to crush them. The only issue is if they're like significantly larger than your army, but it's all fun in the game. Part of the fun of the game. You'll get crushed by rebels soon enough, young Padawan. Also, here is the disasters tab, which is section, which is currently empty for us. But basically, various disasters can befall your country. There'll be tickers, and if you mouse over, there'll be explanations. And if you're too confused, go check the wiki. Okay, so let's talk about religion. Every country has a religion, and each province has a religion, and sometimes they're the same. Usually they're the same, but often they're not. There's a religion overlay tab here, so you can see Europe is almost entirely Catholic, Eastern Europe largely Orthodox, and then Islam down here, Sunni and Shiite, and there are other types of Islam. There's Ibadis down here, and so on and so forth. There's others across the world. This is where you convert provinces. So up here, I mentioned before, we have missionaries. You can send them out. It costs a certain amount each month, and it takes a certain amount of time. These have to do with your missionary strength, amongst other things. And you generally do want to convert provinces when you can, because that contributes to your religious unity, which is displayed here. It has various effects, the main one being rebels. So if it's low, you have more rebels, so it's good to have a lot of religious unity. There's a bunch of other stats here. Tolerance, these mainly have to do with how your provinces of different faith relate to you. There's other features for different religions. I'm just showing you the vague screen, but for example, Muslim rulers have a whole thing of piety. They can be legalistic or mystical or whatever, but again, you'll just get there. You can read it in the opening pop-up, and there's all of the mouse over information. And you can convert to other religions up here, though you can't always convert. As you can see, there's no potential religions to convert to right now. Protestantism and the Reformation will both occur in the next, couple of decades, and then most countries that are Catholic can convert to Protestant or whatever, and there's similar but different mechanics for Islam. Again, you'll discover it as you go. The detail's not super important. If you have a lot of money, you can be Defender of the Faith, which gives you a bunch of buffs, but also makes you have to go to war. That's my dog sneezing. I don't know if you heard that, but anyway, that's all for the religion one. Military, similar. There's a lot of information here. There's also several submenus, so I'm not going to go over all of it. Some of the things that are really useful are this mothball and activate all forts. I talked about that before in the budget screen, the economy screen. This also gives you all of the details about how powerful your different troops are. You can change the ones that you're using, which you can see. Oh, I should have pointed it out before. You can just scroll back a second. You'll see that the morale of our troops dropped because they've basically been replaced with new troops, sort of, in a way. So don't do that when you're just about to have a battle, is my point there. And yeah, same, we can do it with the cavalry as well. And we just lost a bunch more morale as well. And that'll just tick up again each month. And then once you unlock artillery, you can do the same with artillery. And you'll get new troops available as you go up in tech. And as you can see, they have these stats here, these pips of various sorts. They're unlocked at different tech levels. And, yeah, it all makes sense as you're going. What else is there? Okay, so naval units, same deal. They'll upgrade as you get new Diplotech. There's another little hidden button here. You can also see you can select a naval doctrine. These give buffs to all of your ships, but they cost a bunch of money. So just mouse over those and you'll get the details. I like the ones, I mean, they're all good, but ship trade power and chance to capture enemy ships are really good. Galley combat ability, really good. Naval maintenance modifier, rarely the one that I go for. These have a bunch of stats about your like armies / military status as a whole. Army tradition, military tactics, morale, fort defense, all of these things, they're all occasionally important, but mostly just like you want number be good. The only ones that I really want to draw your attention to here are land force limit. So we have a maximum of, well, a soft limit of 24 troops, land troops. That includes cavalry, infantry, and artillery once we unlock them. We currently have 18. Once you go past 24, it starts costing you quite a lot more money quite quickly. So you want to keep to your force limit at the start of the game until you're raking in tons of cash. Same with the naval force limit. I tend to find myself way over naval force limit pretty early, but that's because I tend to like deactivate a bunch of my warships and just turn them on before I'm going to go to war, so that saves a bunch of money. Another useful thing, I think this might also be a DLC thing, but I'm not 100%, I'm sorry, is slacken recruiting standards. So you can lower your army professionalism, which is this bar here, and which gives you little perks at each like tier here, which for the most part aren't that good, but like some of them are very good. Like this one is pretty good, the very top one, but the first one is like, oh, okay. But they scale as well, so just like the higher number gives you a bunch of stuff, as you can see here, like siege ability, for example, and like extra damage dealt, so that's pretty good. But you can spend some of that to gain manpower, which I'm just going to do that now to show you. Cool, got a bunch of manpower, good-o, and that little bit of green disappeared. The other thing you can do here, you can do it in more useful places, so like it is recruited general, so if you click that, we can name him something, so I'm going to call him Snooty McBagel, after my dog, and you can see it's going to cost us 50 military power, and give us 1% professionalism. We just spent 5% on this, so Snooty McBagel, he's got some stats, he's pretty much entirely useless for reasons that don't matter right at the moment, but whatever. Fire is not relevant at the start of the game, so any of these other ones would be more meaningful. That's fine. Same, we can recruit an admiral, and we can also give our ruler military command. The ear-shattering trumpet blast. There we go. That's a way more useful ruler, military general, I should say. The siege pips make you siege faster. The other ones fight more good and move more good faster. And we can fire this Snooty McBagel. Sorry, Bagel, you're a good boy, but we're going to get rid of you. There you go. That's that. Just 2 more to go. We've got subjects. We just have the one subject. If we're a different country with no subjects, this will be grayed out. If we're something like, I don't know, Mamluks, we'll have a bunch more. And there are special interactions that you can do with your subjects. So these are countries that like rely on you in some way. We can make them send their trade to us. We can make them send us more money, but no longer come to war on our behalf. We can give them a province. All of this other stuff. You'll encounter this when you need it. I'd suggest probably for your first couple of games, play as a country without a vassal. But yeah, whatever. A lot of people recommend starting as Ottomans, and I think they have vassals at the beginning. No, they don't. No, never mind. My point being, vassals, subjects, will get filled out more as the game goes on, especially if you're playing a colonial nation. You'll have a bunch of colonial provinces in the New World, and they'll show up here. One thing that's useful to do is the focus. So this is actually a military focus. You change it here. I like to set them to supportive, so they'll just like come and follow your armies around. But if you've got a bunch of vassals and you don't want to get personally involved in a war, just put them on aggressive, and then they'll all go and fight the war for you. But yeah, you can play around with that as you go, and this just gives you some stats about them and about what they contribute to you. Vassals contribute pretty significantly to your land force limit, so they're giving us plus 1.3. I guess that's not that much compared to our provinces, but for a lot of countries, having a vassal will significantly increase your land force limit. That's pretty much all for this screen. There's obviously quite a lot of stuff that you can do here, and there's important strategy about how to interact with your vassals, but it's not super important. Now, because we're a republic, we don't have estates. So while we're here quickly, I'll just show you the equivalent of estates. I mentioned this very briefly before, but basically in republics, you have factions, they have different interests, they gain influence for various different reasons, navy tradition, positive stability, whatever, and you can like press boost to increase their influence if you want them to be the dominant one, and then they'll provide a buff for you. So here we are now as France. Estates. Okay, so there's a lot to be said about estates, but basically these are three, well, I would say factions, except that's the name of the mechanic that I just mentioned a minute ago. And they each have loyalty to you and an influence over the country and a share of land that they control. So you can see here it's divided 4 ways. So there's 3 factions plus us, the Crown Land. In this Crown Land tab, you can see, no effect. But if you have very high Crown Land or very low Crown Land, you get a buff or a debuff. So for example, we can sell our titles. We'll send 10% of our Crown Land. So let's do that. Right, so you can see the pie graph changed. We got a bunch of money, and now we're getting this alert. Oh, you've got low Crown Land. So because we're below below 30, I'm pretty sure it is, we get these debuffs to national tax modifier, absolutism, which again, don't worry about that right now, and liberty desire, and so that's bad. So in general, you don't want to be negative in these things, and you want to seize Crown Land whenever possible, which is this button, but the AI did it for France already, so we can't click it right now. But that would give you 5% of the land and makes all of the factions a bit grumpy with you. The other thing you can do here is summon the Diet. So you can only do this every 20 years. So you can only do this every 5 years, rather. And basically your estates will come together, offer you some options for missions that you can do, like sort of tasks. So for example, the clergy want us to make the Pope like us, so we can just accept that, and when we complete it, we'll get +1 yearly Pope influence, or Pope points. So good. That's our agenda, and if we want to be reminded, it'll be like, oh yeah, you need to make the Pope like us, so let's go send off an alliance offer to the Pope. That's going to make it like him a bunch more, and later we can improve relations as well, but that's fine. And then once we complete that, the clergy will like us a bunch, and we'll get more Pope points each month, which again, haven't talked about it too much, but basically you get Pope points and you can spend it on becoming the next Pope or on some of these quite powerful buffs that you can buy. Each estate has these privileges, which are basically like things that you grant them that they can do. So for example, we could give the clergy a monopoly on wine, or let's say monopoly on wool, and that would cost, it would increase their loyalty because we're giving them like a special treat, monopoly. It won't change their influence, it won't change how much Crown Land we get, and it'll change absolutism, which again only kicks in pretty late in the game, so don't worry about it for now. And what we will get for it is 1 mercantilism. We get 11 gold now and no income from wool. So if we just go over to look at our balance here, we take the monopoly on wool. Let's have a look at that. And our income dropped because now we're not getting any income from wool each month. So I tend to give out the ones that are cheap because mercantilism is valuable, and 11 ducats over a year doesn't make much difference there. There's a bunch of other ones, a bunch of these other privileges. Some of them are very powerful. For example, these ones that grant you monthly military power, but they do cost Crown Land. So I'll take that just for an example. And now our debuff from having low Crown Land has gotten worse. But we're earning an extra military power each month, so maybe it's worth it. There's a bunch of different options here. I have my own thoughts about what's best, and you'll figure out yours as you go. And of course, like other better streamers than I will give you like specific advice, especially for different countries. You can also get rid of privileges only if their estate's loyalty is higher than their influence. So that's true of the clergy and the bourgeoisie, but not the nobility. So I can't revoke these nobility ones, whereas I could revoke oversight by the clergy. It'll make them mad, but fuck them. If you get below 30 loyalty, they will be bad, and that can cause rebels to spawn. It hasn't just here for us, but it can do. And it could cause other problems. But yeah, look, that's the main menu. I think this has gone on long enough. Hopefully that it gives you a bit of an insight into, I don't know, the game and how to interact with a bunch of stuff about your country. I will do another video where I'll talk about the production interface here and the overview, the overlays for the map down here. Let me know if there's anything else that you'd like me to do, and please drop a like if this has been somewhat informative.